to say, how should the woman initiate? The woman, if I'm the woman, I would say, I don't initiate because I don't want to. Why would I initiate?
Great point. Fantastic point.
We're geometrically designed to initiate. Initiate.
Yeah, and so I've heard women say, oh, well, like, the reason why I don't do it is he's so good at it.
Enter the Freud.
Warning. This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice.
Relationship is past the honeymoon phase, and so then there's a discrepancy of sex drive. One person wants sex more than the other, and of course it goes both ways. Mostly it is men want sex more than women. And so then guys turn into these simping, totally like thirsty, whatever we want to call them, basically Me Too fucking rapists, right? Dude, that's what they feel like. And then the woman feels like that's what her dude is becoming. And so they're both super uncomfortable. The woman and then it turns into this weird thing where everyone's keeping score of like, when is the last time we had sex? Who initiated it? You need to initiate. And it like this is where we need to talk is if the pressure is on the woman to initiate sex, how the hell are they going to do it? Like what are they going to do? That's
well, and if the pressure's on the woman to initiate sex, why is them initiating so? Like, I don't want to say initiating sex isn't hard, because it is hard in terms of like nervousness or embarrassment or shame.
Yep.
But practically speaking, it's really easy. It's psychologically can be difficult. Practically speaking, I mean, because we could just say that it's so much easier for the woman. All the woman has to do is like say, "Hey, let's have sex tonight." Like, done.
Yep.
And then sometimes you hear, I mean, this is a whole can of worms. I don't know which way to take this, but sometimes you hear like therapists or relationship coaches say that you should kind of have like date night, and date night should sort of generally include sex, and so that you just kind of know, oh, every Thursday night we're gonna have date night and we're gonna have sex, and that's the way to do it, just to like keep your sex life regular in a relationship.
I totally disagree with that. Like,
yeah, what's your stance?
100%. I think that is what causes the grind, and then it causes this kind of like what becomes like sex avoidance, and then sex rejection sensitivity is what I have to say. Like, the guys develop this thing. I'm gonna coin a phrase if it's not already coined, but the men develop this sex rejection sensitivity, and so they make a tiny gesture towards like, hey babe, try to touch her hair, and she's like, she goes, because she wants to reject that before it turns into having to reject him with his naked body, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point, so they try to minimize the rejection because they really care about the other person. But then just look at how weird a position it puts the woman in, right? Where she is somehow supposed to keep up with this otherwise totally like sexually like men are designed to like put their cocks into things. Like, we are designed to initiate sex.
Yes.
Like, straight up. It just, like, if you just look at the geometry of it.
Mm-hmm. We're geometrically designed to initiate. Initiate.
Yeah, and so I've heard women say, oh, well, like, the reason why I don't do it is he's so good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so good at it that why would I? But then at some point, the person might think that the man might think, well, you're just doing it because you think I need it, and you don't even want it, and so then I don't want it, and so that puts the woman in another weird situation where then she's supposed to act like she wants it. And so then, like, this is where my whole point of bringing up the subject is like what about this woman's psychology? Like, all female psychologies, unless they totally embrace the idea of like, oh, every time my guy wants to have sex, I'm totally down. Like, I'm jumping at that, and I'm going to embrace some level of like spontaneity. I'm even going to be like loud about sex so he really understands. Because that's the other thing is like when people start complaining about, oh, they're too quiet during sex.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't make any noises. And my last guys would scream. And I'm like, really? Like, what the fuck were you doing to them? Like, you know, like these kinds of complexities. And as I told you, like, I don't want to talk about it in just the normal way of like, this is how the sex avoidance happens, and then the solution is to start wearing provocative clothes and make sure there's more touch, and then there's foreplay. And it's like, I don't think anyone's admitting like how many types of sex exist in a relationship. And if you only have one kind, then we're going to get to this. It's like a potion for this problem. And here's what I mean about one kind. You have one kind where, okay, she doesn't have orgasms from sex, which is really common. And so you have a ritual where you go down on her, she has an orgasm, and then she's like, oh yeah, put it in me, and then you guys have sex, and then that's the thing you do, right?
Yeah.
Well, so that has a whole sequence of steps that then can only happen in certain situations. You then can't have the experience of like, hey, I have this like need. We have like 10 minutes before a meeting. Can you just like let me fucking do something?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I don't want to. And then it's like, how do you get to a conversation where the person is then like, all right, all you get is just a bad hand job. Ready for it? Like,
yeah.
What is that? And like, okay, so there's the problem. You asked me for a clinical problem. There it is, right?
Okay, but as you're describing the problem, I feel like we have to tackle maybe a problem that's a layer deeper, because I can't help but think about this when you're talking about it, it's like if a woman isn't initiating sex, maybe it's because she's not really wanting to have sex. And then, so then it sort of feels like, well, maybe that's the problem that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, well, what do you talk about? Like, because of course many times they don't want to have sex, and that's why they're saying they don't want to. And
right, but like it seems like there's a really common pattern where people get in a long-term relationship, and after a few years or after having kids or whatever, the relationship gets to a point where one partner, or maybe both I guess both partners, maybe it's not a problem, but one partner just has like lost their interest in having sex, like almost entirely. And then and it seems like it's common where one person seems to have lost their interest, the other person hasn't. So the other person becomes this pest.
Yep.
Like, hey, you know, and then
yes.
And then that really makes the one person totally lose their interest. Maybe they would have a small amount of interest if they weren't being pestered by their partner. But because they're pestered by their partner and the partner wants more than them, it seems like they never want sex.
Right, but so I think what you're pointing out right here is the thing that I find to be psychologically fascinating. This is it, right here. This is the potion that I find that people cannot put their finger on. And you are very close to identifying this strange psychic phenomenon that like if we repeat a behavior multiple times over and over and over within a relationship, and then within one's own like internal cognition, their identity. Then we end up in a kind of fixation. Same thing is like if you were just deciding like, okay, I've never really been into weightlifting and I want to start weightlifting, right? And it's like, that's a long process because once upon a time, none of us lifted weights and we all then started doing it, right? But the same thing is to ask a woman to start initiating sex. If she's never initiated sex, and historically since the beginning of time, she's been told, oh no, like, keep those pretty things away from the boys. They just want them. And you have to somehow become this, make sure you're sexy as hell so all the men want to marry you, but then don't ever actually, do anything that is sexy. And so then, how do you go from a place where internally you're not good at it because you're not actually anatomically designed to be the sex initiator, right? You're like the sex attractor. You're like a flower that brings the bees. But then we're asking this flower, we're like, hey flower, get your cock.
Go out there and hunt some bees and tackle them.
Yeah, go grab them. Get your cock out and get wild. And it's like, what are we asking? And that's what I wonder is like, oh, well, you've met certainly some women who are just like, I don't know what to say, shameless in their ability to initiate sex, right? Mm-hmm. Like the whole thing, all the way down to like tell you in advance, oh, we're gonna fuck. Then get there during the whole thing, tell you how awesome it is, like, oh, I love this and that, and like literally just complete the entire thing fully and based on their desires.
Yes.
But like, what percentage of women do you think that is?
5% would be my guess.
That's literally what I was gonna guess. It's gotta be.
You think 5%? Yeah.
It's gotta be as low as 5%. The majority of women, I do not think, and some would say, oh, women who are hot, they don't even have to try. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is all women. Like, all women are not, well, culturally raised to seek out and initiate. And I think like boys, what do you think boys' first thing of initiating sex is? Do you think it's like asking a girl to a formal, or is it?
Yeah, or in middle school saying, "Hey, will you go with me?"
Oh yeah. Right. So this is where it begins, and you start to suffer horrendous rejection in this, which then later, for some, turns into my new phrase of sex rejection sensitivity, right? Which is like this problem of I'm not going to ask for sex until I'm desperate. And then when I'm desperate, I'm going to come and be like, oh, come on, like, we got to do it. And then that is so repulsive that very few ladies are going to be able to do it. And so then they're mostly going to just be like, oh, I'm tired, get away from me. And then the guy's literally going to have a giant meltdown. And like I don't know, I just felt kind of lost right there. What are your thoughts about this subject?
Well, I think to tackle it, we got to like step back and talk about some of the bigger, like maybe biological, maybe cultural, or assumptions around marriage and relationships. So I'll just try to do it really quick.
Okay.
In our culture, I mean, things have changed now, but historically in our culture, there sort of was this assumption that you meet your future wife and then you settle down and you're with them for the rest of your life. So that's an assumption, this monogamous assumption. There's an assumption that men pursue, just like your bee and your flower metaphor was a perfect one. Men are bees, women are flowers, so women should look like really pretty flowers to attract the bees, but the bees are going to be flying around and they're going to select the flower. And so that's an assumption. And then the bee and the flower, in terms of mate selection, it's the bee and the flower, but then there's also the assumption that in terms of sex, it's like the bee and the flower. Okay, so those are all the cultural assumptions. So then what typically happens is in your 20s or whatever, the bee flies around, sees a pretty flower it wants to have sex with, selects the flower. If the flower accepts it, cool, then they get together, and then in theory, they're supposed to be together forever.
Yeah.
And then there's arguments about whether or not that's even a sustainable arrangement. But what we do know is that very, very commonly that arrangement leads to sort of like sexual stagnation and this situation we're talking about where the bee wants sex more than the flower, and it kind of gets into this pattern that is a negative spiral. Okay, so that's sort of the backdrop that everyone's fighting against.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about that backdrop, to say how should the woman initiate? The woman, if I'm the woman, I would say I don't initiate because I don't want to. Why would I initiate?
Great point. Fantastic point. But
and so I think go ahead.
But in this case, no. This is like the relationship's problems have been placed on you do not initiate sex enough, which is not obviously not the problem as you and I were talking about prior to recording. It's like plenty of perfect relationships, the lady almost never initiates sex, and then you guys just totally figure it out. And you're like, oh, I'm good at initiating sex. Don't worry about it. Like, I'll make sure that we do it plenty. Right? Like, that. But when that doesn't happen, and the person has developed this sensitivity so that everything... Has that ever happened to you? I remember when I was young, that happened in one of my relationships where I became like super rejected and like everything. I mean, it just ruined the relationship, actually.
Absolutely.
It infiltrated the entire thing. All of the sexual interactions were then just like tainted by this like I absolutely felt creepy and manipulative just to like get my basic needs met.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so awful that in reaction to that, I just dated the sluttiest women I could afterwards.
Yes, of course. That was a healthy reaction, I think.
In reaction to, it was because it was just so devastating. And it was because of a whole religious purity bullshit that was infused in. And I think that's a big fucking source in this country is like
totally
female sexuality is somewhat stifled due to this like this contagion of religious purity, and then at some point women are now kind of being expected to be like, oh yeah, now you got to figure out how to be sex initiators to have a happy marriage and to get the guys you want, and to like what a fuck job that is. And like it just leads us into some tough some turbulent waters. But what were you thinking?
Okay, so I think the problem that we see in couples therapy, couples come in with this problem fairly often, is what you're describing, and it's most commonly the dude's feeling really shitty because he's in this sex rejection syndrome thing.
Yeah.
And the woman feels even less interested in sex when the guy's in that thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that's the couple that has come in to see you. I feel like it's a leap to talk. So maybe eventually you'd get to the point where the message to the woman would be like, hey, if you want this relationship to work, you're going to have sex with the guy. Like, are you guys just going to stay married and not have sex? Is that your plan, lady? You know, maybe there's that message ultimately is going to get said to her, obviously in a more strategic way than that, but
right. But as you pointed out, she doesn't want to have sex with this simping, thirsty dude, right? So he needs to get the message hard. And this one is sometimes so complicated that people can't get out. They cannot solve it, and they split, right?
Break up. Yeah, I think that's probably the most I think the two most common outcomes on this are they break up, get divorced, whatever.
Yeah.
Or they just succumb to this shitty pattern for years and years and just are in it, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah. Okay. And both of those are completely unacceptable, right? Because we can't just say to the woman, "Hey, you're just going to have sex with this guy more," because she's just like. Then further and further repulsed. And then eventually is going, that's really going to fuck with her, where she's just like, I'm like one of those women from back in the day where I'm property and I'm just supposed to fuck this guy because we're married or because we're in a relationship.
Totally, right.
And and if I don't, he's going to leave and cheat. And so, like, I'm just obligated to have sex.
Right.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's not a good situation.
No,
okay, so the alternative you've kind of been implying is that the woman needs to find her own inner erotic energy.
Yes. Yeah.
That she needs to find that and get in touch with it and learn to kind of like have it like come alive, and then she needs to get liberated enough to express it in the way that she wants to express it.
Yeah, and where's the course to do this, right? Where is this? Because there's like pole dancing, but like, you know, I see that movies and media have really fucked this up. Like back in there was this movie called Striptease or something, and it was this girl from Saved by the Bell. That old TV show. She comes out. She's supposed to be this stripper, and she's just like trash at it. Like her idea of what is seductive is just like, I mean, everyone who saw it was just like, "Whoa, lady!" Like that's just not hot. And I think a lot of women are afraid if they try to initiate, that's going to be the experience. Because then there's the alternative is Selma Hayek in Dusk Till Dawn, she comes out with the python. Are you kidding me, bro? Dude, that was the most insane fucking imagery of like a sex goddess.
Totally.
Like, I mean, and then she's a vampire, right? Like, it's just like, oh God, right? And so I like this. The difficulty of having that. It's almost like my issue with Goggins again, right? It's like there is the image of the sex goddess, right? And then you, as a normal human being, are supposed to then figure out how are you going to be sexy? Like, how are you going to be around your house with your dude and then be sexy in a way that you're comfortable with? You can't fucking get a python and walk in like Selma Hayek. I mean, that's just an insane thing to suggest. But so then there has to be a thing where it's like you start doing push-ups, and then you gradually do some pull-ups, and eventually you go to the gym and you do some deads, and then next thing you know, you're fucking like you're an actual like power lifter. Like, there's gotta be an entry point that will. So this also points out that the solution to this couple's problem is going to take a long time. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like the guy's going to get rejected a lot, and he's going to have to get some thicker skin, and the girl's going to have to reject him so she's not feeling like a used up whore.
Yep. Yeah, okay, so if we're in couples therapy, I think what I do is you kind of use this metaphor of the gym is like, okay, there's the mountaintop, that's our goal, and the goal is where the woman is totally has found and anchored in her sexual desire and her sexual energy, and she can access that and it can just flow out. That's the mountaintop goal. And how to get there, I think it's actually as simple as helping her start to like search in herself and find what's sexy, what's erotically exciting. Find little things and just start to do little things and experiment with different things. And if it's that she gets dressed up super sexy and goes out with her girlfriends one night and other guys look at her and then she comes home and that gets her going, or if it's, whatever it is. She, like, every person has their own little kind of fantasy turn-ons, little sparks, and a woman needs to find her little sparks and start cultivating the little sparks and cultivate and eventually turn them into a fire.
Okay, but here's our problem is, what by the time we meet these people, they're so avoidant due to the idea that maybe it won't be received well, or they just haven't initiated in 10 years, and so they have no ideas. None. Like, they have no thing to do a spark, right? Like, they don't have any. I think there was this movie where Jennifer Aniston and the dude, I don't remember the guy from I don't fucking know what his name is, but they're supposed to be married in this thing, and her instruction from her friend of how to get him interested in her again is to go get a wax, like a Brazilian, and then just wear a t-shirt and walk through the living room. That's her that's what she's instructed to do by her friends. Like, just show him the straight, clean beaver, and he'll jump to it, right? Like, that's the instruction, right? Like, in this film, right? It's Vince Vaughn is the guy who is subjected to this treatment, and it's because they're I don't remember the fucking story, but like how many women are going to do something so drastic like that? Like, dude, that's so unrealistic. We need something that is like accessible, and I think for your mind to relax and not be so freaked out about the guy who's coming, the pestering guy, is you'd need like 10 ideas in your mind of like, I got 10 plans of things I'm gonna do. Like, these 10 things are my new sexy routines I do. And then, because those are considered initiating, even if he doesn't pick up on it, and even if sex never happens, right? Because, as we said, I don't want people to think like sex is when we do the whole thing where you go down on them in the shower and then you end up over here and blah, 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 like that stupid thing. Like, no, that is not initiating sex. That's like initiating. Yep. That's initiating the pattern that got you fucked up in the first place. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
totally. I think that the other factor that's important to focus on is not just the woman's her contact with her sexuality. That's obviously important, but the other factor is the relationship with the guy, like what's going on in where they meet.
Oh yeah.
Because I think lots of times in your typical long-term marriage, there's kind of this like bleh, right? And then, like you say, there's a common thing where the guy is simping or doing these things that are like super turn-off. And so if you transform that, it can really shift the chemistry in between them. And again, if there's good communication, you just experiment with things. The guy should like suddenly show complete lack of interest and dress up really nice and go out with his buddies.
Yeah.
And And that's going to shift the chemistry in between them in a little way. And you just start throwing wrenches in the gears and shift the chemistry. And as you do that, you'll start to, ideally, if you're thoughtful and have good communication about it, you'll find the things that promote chemistry and the things that kill chemistry. And as you start to find the things that promote them, you can slowly start to work with those.
And how long does this take? Suppose you do these inventive strategies, which I don't know. Someone needs to come up with very good courses and books to help this become more efficient. Like, give 20 good ideas of things like, hey, just put on a football jersey, lady, and then go sit on the couch with your dude with no panties on, but but then how many women are going to feel comfortable enough to do that? Not many, right? But whatever.
No. Well, you'll have to get over some of the discomfort, but again, that's part of it, is people sink into their comfortable, stagnant routines, and they need to force themselves, push their envelope of comfort a little bit.
But okay, and as we've said, okay, this is going against a stagnation and into the discomfort. And as we know in this culture, people are pretty much going the other way. And we've already said it's going to take time. So, like, why are people going to do this? I don't think they are. I think this is just like, what we're talking about is just like, oh, once you've identified this, it's kind of like, oh, you got stage 4 cancer. Like...
Yes,
dude.
Okay, it's getting back to your relationship is stagnant. The sex life isn't good. Like, welcome to the club. You and millions of other people, right? So here are your choices: cheat, get a divorce.
Yep.
Just be stuck in the stagnant misery for the rest of your lives.
That's 3.
Or do what the fuck we're talking about. Those are your 3 choices. The answer's really obvious to me.
yeah. Well, what is the answer? Like, which one of those is obvious? To me, it looks like majority of the people are going to select the I just exist in wallowing misery, as I'm also becoming obese, as I'm also just becoming like I'm drifting towards the norm in American society, right? And so then I'm just like outraged and pretty much not very fun to be around with my people. Yeah,
and that's probably what the most people do. The second most people probably do the cheat divorce path.
Yep.
Honestly, that's the right path. If your partner is going to do the sinking into normal misery doldrums, then the right path is probably the divorce path.
Shit, I forgot. Statistically, no, the divorce is higher.
More common.
Yeah, it's more common. Mostly people give up when they run into this problem. And remember, we just started by saying that, hey, this is just a problem of a discrepancy of perceived sex drive. One person says they want to have sex more than the other, and then that turns into like, oh, you offended me because you didn't want to have sex at 2 a.m., and they're like, get the fuck off me. And you're like, no, you rejected me at 2 a.m. And then, oh, now I keep score. And on goes this thing, which very quickly you're going to have to figure out. But, and it's like, do you think this is easier or harder than figuring out how to lose weight?
I don't know, man. They're both pretty fucking hard. They both require like major shifts in a person's default psychology.
Right. And it's like, I did not expect this conversation to end up here where we're just like, this doesn't look good once we see these kinds of symptoms, right? Like, this doesn't look good. But there's plenty of courses out there online, and there's plenty of sex therapists and people who are willing to say, oh, yeah, come to me. We'll talk all about how you do oral sex, and then you're going to have a much better relationship. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's, I mean, obviously, this is a huge problem. So people are going to start offering solutions. But if this solution is like the solution to addiction, where it's like the success rate is 5%, then like
yeah. Okay. Well, let's throw this idea in here. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know where I stand on it, but we should at least have it on the table, which is the sex at dawn argument.
Okay.
For those who don't know the sex at dawn argument, it's very simple to this. The idea is that in this book, this famous book, Sex at Dawn, the authors very persuasively argue that humans evolved in tribes being non-monogamous.
Yeah.
That's how humans were for hundreds of thousands of years. And that then when humans shifted from this tribal hunter-gatherer small tribes into cities, that thing didn't work anymore, so then people came up with this thing called marriage, but that we're not really biologically designed to do that. So if that argument is true, and I don't think it's as simple as that. There's truth to it, but I don't think it's so simply true as they are trying to make it out to be. But let's just pretend it's true. If that's true, then the problem isn't that people need to learn new strategies to find sparks or to... The problem is the assumption that you can just live happily ever after.
Yes. Now you've just dropped a nuclear... Or you've just exposed the nuclear codes, right? Like, I think as a result of where we've just ended up, it's like, I want to start something new called the Vaginashpere, right? Where I'm in total support that women should never have to initiate sex. They're not fucking designed for it. What the fuck are we doing creating this bullshit illusion that they're Jennifer Aniston walking through the living room with a fucking waxed vagina, or they're Selma Hayek? Like, fuck that, dude. That is such bullshit. Even though I love it when the chick I'm with is as gangster as that, right? Like, yes. I pursue women like that. I love having women like that in my life, but fuck it. Like, we have to just shut the fuck up and acknowledge that, like, hey, women are not at that place yet. Maybe in 100 years, when society shifts and the sex roles have shifted so severely, then we can say, oh, you need to initiate sex more. But in the Vaginashpere, I want to, like, do a whole series on, like every guy shut the fuck up, and you need to learn how to become someone who can actually just, like, tolerate the appropriate amount of rejection, make it fun, and then give them other solutions. Like, oh yeah, they don't want to do some kind of crazy kinky fucking thing that you're interested in. Well, settle for the next thing, dude. Be like, well, I don't even care what it is. I was just gonna say some stupid ass kinky shit, but whatever.
Well, okay, that your Vaginashpere perspective, I think there's a lot of truth to that. However, what happens? You're the new Vaginashpere therapist, and a couple comes in to see you, and they've been together for 9 years. They got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they haven't had sex for 2 years, and they're like, "Fuck, what do we do?"
Yeah. Well, I think from the perspective of the Vaginashpere, we would lean on the guy and say, like, bro,
and we'd be like, dude, you need to, like, step it up and, like, become an attractive man.
Yeah, be seductive motherfucker, bro. How did you get her pregnant in the first place? Like, do not just turn into a schlub and then make demands. Ooh, you give me the pussy. Like, no. But because it's all too weird that it's turned into this thing where I think we're somewhat inappropriately making the demand for women to initiate sex, but then unless we give them a clear goddamn runway, like that's like oh man, like dude, an on-ramping to CrossFit or something where it's like, okay, dude, you want to become someone who can do this sport? Here's how you start. You start by walking, this.
But that okay, this guy, the Vaginashpere good husband that you're implying,
Yeah.
he won't simp, right? Like he doesn't do the simpy pestering thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's got to figure out a different kind of a game, right?
Because I think that in the Sex at Dawn research they state, and I suspect that this is, and actually this might not be Sex at Dawn, but this is research, I've read this, that women lose interest in sex much more quickly than, in terms of in a long-term monogamous relationship, women naturally lose interest in sex with the partner more quickly than men do.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah.
The Sex at Dawn sort of theory about this couple that came in to see you is, it's like, you know, we can come up with all the little football jerseys, Brazilian wax techniques, or the dude can come up with all his like CrossFit, wear nice clothes, be gentlemanly, but like if they have this monogamous thing going on, they might just not find sparks. And here's the interesting issue it brings up, is it could be that the guy needs to there needs to be a feeling, and I think there's truth to this. There needs in the Christian marriage, both people have this certainty that they got each other in the pocket.
Yeah.
And that, I think that can kill eros. Whereas if there's a little bit of something that makes both people not take each other for granted,
yeah.
If the woman thinks, oh shit, other women want my man, I could lose him, I think it might keep her appetite alive.
Okay.
Because I do think that women in the Christian marriage thing in America, that women get, especially like in the good white people, liberal, educated households, the women's are like, oh, I got this dude, he's my bitch, he's in my pocket, and then it kills the eros. Whereas if the woman is like, oh shit, my dude's hot and all these other women want to fuck him, I think it might help her keep her sex drive up.
What do you call that? And because this is an interesting phenomenon that you point out, and I think you're quite right and onto something. I don't know what that's called though. It's like I mean that goes into this kind of idea of the anti-Jordan Peterson perspective that I see that you're developing. Like as soon as I start the Vaginashpere, I see that you're gonna have you and Jordan should just have a fucking standoff on this issue and finally like see how far he's willing to go with it, because you're both right, and then like for whatever, Jordan is still married. I don't know how, but then like it implies that everyone else who couldn't do this strange rekindling of the sex avoidance that occurs, they were unable to make the leap into this novelty of shit that everyone is offering. Like all the therapists and all the courses are just saying like, oh, we just bring in new novelty, you try new sex things in the room, you play out role plays, and you wear costumes. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, this is so misleading. It's so goddamn misleading. Because it doesn't even get to the point of like, what are people even doing with sex? And I can't believe we're back to this subject. Like, you and I talked about this like a year ago. Like a year ago, of like how lost everyone is with the pursuit of sex, and in your like latest, I think, brilliant statement of like, if each of them does not become complacent, right, which means they're both trying hard enough that there is definite possibility that the other person can just leave at any time, well then that, I mean, for some people it would cause serious neuroses and jealousy issues.
Well, I think that's the paradox of this, is what we want in a committed relationship is to feel very secure that we have our partner.
Yeah.
But that extreme security, I think, also can kill the eros.
Yeah. Shit. I wish this is where we started. I find this much more fascinating than the concept of like, why is it such a struggle for women to initiate? I think we've solved it with the Vaginashpere. Like,
Yeah.
do you think that's an okay thing? Can we just say like, hey, for the next 100 years, women, you don't have to fucking initiate sex. Don't worry, we got this. Like, look at our anatomy. Look at it. Like,
yeah.
Like, dude, is that okay, or am I just like, I know that I've lost.
I think it might be. I think it might be true, and the bee and the flower metaphor really makes it seem like it is true. Now, I do think that women should find their own inner goddess, Selma Hayek character, also.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they should be forced to do that by a couples therapist or something. It's more like that should be their own personal journey or something.
Yeah, but like in the case of the simping guy, where he's just like, babe, I just want you to want me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just need you to when I express my desire for you and I show you the boner, like, I don't want boner shame, and I want you to be like, oh yeah, that's like, oh, I don't get enough of this. Like, okay,
yeah.
Well, shit, that's a hard one to orchestrate and it be real, because if it's fake, everyone knows, and you got a fucking problem, right?
Yeah.
So, like that's where the whole idea of you get a date night and that's supposed to solve it, and the couples therapist does it, and it's like, well, as much as the woman is on her journey to become the Selma Hayek guy, then don't you think along the way the dude is also on this like parallel journey of figuring out like, what is this, like what's the seductive posture for him in this next stage of life? Like, in the case you said, they got 2 little kids, and like how are you a seductive dude with your little kids, and you're just like, oh yeah, like what makes women want to have sex with you?
Yeah, and you know, there's this research that shows that after a man has kids, his testosterone goes down. You heard that?
Yeah.
And so maybe what's supposed to happen is when you have little kids, your testosterone's supposed to go down, your seduction goes down, your sex life goes down, and like that's okay for 3, 4, 5 years, but then after that, at some point, you're gonna need to like re-find it.
I don't know, and I think it is possible. I remember I used to take my son when he was like 2 years old to the mall, and he would just like ride on my shoulder. He would literally like sit on my shoulder, and I would hold him like this, and we would just kind of cruise through the mall, and ladies would just fucking stare at us, not as though they were like, oh, I want to fuck that guy, but they were unusually interested.
Yes. They probably were. They probably would have led to, oh, I want to fuck that guy. It probably was an exciting thing for him.
It was somehow exciting. Like, look at this dad. What with this my son was very cute, and like we were just like, doo, here we are, like, and we're just in full contact, no stroller, nothing. It's just straight, like a totally different expression. And I don't know what the posture is for all of us as men. So that then, like, women want us to, like, they want us to initiate, and they won't reject us and turn us into their sex rejection simpies.
Yes.
Like,
Yet the turning into the sex rejection simpy is not the way.
dude, but it's like the tendency.
I've done it in a relationship. I know the tendency. It seems inevitable. If you're married to this woman, and so she's now your only source of sex, and now she's rejecting you, you can't help but be like, oh, please, can I please get some sex?
Yeah, dude. It's like, it's such a strange phenomenon, and I can't think of anything else like that in life, right? Where it's just like, you know, if you're at a job and they don't pay you enough, you get a fucking new job. Like, if you don't like how fat you are, you switch your fucking macros and your calories. Like, everything else, we have full permission to just, like, do shit with. But in this case, it's just like, oh, yeah, the most important basic drive that you have, no, you don't get to do shit about it.
Yep. Yep.
You see, you with me on that, on the oddity of this? I think...
Hell yeah. On the how it's not really an okay arrangement.
Yeah, it's not. And so, like, do you think that you and I are slowly starting to realize that there's like and that we have a problem with long-term monogamy? Like, I would never say that. I would never say it.
But we have a problem with how long-term monogamy has typically been played out.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I like it. Yeah, thank you. Because I don't want to say things that are incorrect, like, yeah, I don't agree with Jordan. Hey, by the way, right before we wrap up, did you see the shit that's happening to Jordan with the Canadian Psychology Board?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Oh my! It's like, I think that is going to be the show of the year.
Yeah.
That board is in so much fucking trouble, and I don't know how they're gonna walk it back. You familiar with that case?
Totally, yeah, and I agree with you. I think this is going to only serve to empower Jordan even more and to make Canada look even stupider.
It already has, absolutely, instantly, and it's brought into question, like, the strange tilt of all of these medical boards. Like, if they go through with this and then take his license, it's going to be like one of the craziest fucking things that, like, obviously the problem is, I think they will immediately withdraw because he will just sue the fuck out of them. Right? Totally. Like, if they do say, like, oh yeah, based on these accounts of no one who was your patient and it's all bullshit, and it's so massively skewed left that all 13 of the complaints, it's like, it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I'm very pleased about it because I think it's going to really prove his point, and he's really going to come out on top, and maybe it's just going to discredit licensing boards everywhere, all across the world. We can all give up our license because everyone is going to realize that the licensing boards are so stupid.
Well, do you remember, Dave, when we first started this podcast, how horrified? I mean, I had to consult with Virginia's ethics, like the head of the ethics committee, just to do this podcast, because I was so afraid of, like, what if we say things? Will you guys come and try to attack us? Well, apparently...
The answer is yes.
Apparently, the answer is yes. And as long as you and I stay and say shit like what we're saying, we're cool. But if you become Jordan, and dude, I just think that is too amazing, man. Too amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dave, let's wrap it up, buddy. Hey,
all right, dude.
Awesome. I feel slightly fucking like I have a clue today as a result of this.
Dude, you've joined the Vaginashpere. It's going to save your life.
Awesome, dude. Okay, talk to you later.
Dude. Catch you later.
Bye.